the horror genre, a genre of movie that I feel like has not gotten its just due respect over the years in regards to getting critical acclaim at things like the Oscars or any other significant cinema award. It's a genre that I feel like has been very pivotal in the development and innovation and within the movie industry as a whole, and has been responsible for bringing forth a lot of the most well-known prominent actors over the last decade plus in regards to giving them their first opportunities to be in movies. It's one that is very special in my heart to me, but it's also one that I feel like has been on a very much so dominant run over the past 5 years. And I want to talk about that run as well as where I think the horror movie genre has potential to go in the next 5 years to maybe a decade on. If you guys want to see what I have to say, please stick around and let's get into it.
You're now watching The Captain.
For people that have watched my channel for any amount of time, you guys know I'm a horror fan. It's not a surprise. Even if you're brand new to the channel, welcome. You guys can look through all the videos I have, and there's a playlist for horror in general, and you'll find a bunch of different reviews for different horror movies that I've watched over the last couple years. You'll see videos of where I talk about different things within the horror movie genre, like my video on Black people and their part in the horror movies as a whole. So it's safe to say that I've watched a lot of horror movies over the last 5 years. When you're looking at horror over the last 5 years and the amount of movies that have come out that have been amazing, it's a pretty extensive list, and I just want to go over a couple here. I promise it won't just turn into like me running down the list for 15 minutes. Off top, I'm looking at things like The Black Phone, Late Night with the Devil, Talk to Me, Bring Her Back, Heretic, Pearl, and X, The Menu. Even look at movies that are more recent in something like The Substance or Alien Romulus. These are all amazing movies in their own right and do a lot of amazing things. And it's something that I've noticed being a trend within horror. At least for my time growing up, there was a lot of good horror movies within every year. But very much recently, in the last 5 years, I feel like horror movies have not just been coming out in greater quality and quantity, but since like 2020 and on up until now, I feel like horror movies have gotten a little bit more of a boost within the cultural zeitgeist in regards to people talking about these movies and these movies actually getting some critical acclaim. Something like The Substance actually getting an Oscar, something that at least for my lifetime is kind of unheard of. Me growing up, I tend to see horror movies either not get nominated whatsoever at the Oscars or they get shafted in regards to a lot of the actors as well. Somebody like a Jamie Lee Curtis, in all the amazing horror movies that she's been in her lifetime, she does not get her Oscar during those movies, but she gets an Oscar doing Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, where she wasn't even the most important part of that film, if I do say so myself. Did a great job, but there were other actors that were more deserving in that film, in my personal opinion. But getting back into horror as a whole, the last 5 years have been amazing for the genre, and I want to talk about how big it's been in regards to just people speaking around it in word to mouth. There's the marketing budget that a lot of movies have in regards to trailers, different social media posts and things like that that come out, snippets. But the thing that is very invaluable in regards to a movie success, and we saw it a lot with Sinners, and I guess Sinners being another movie that we can add to that list, is a word to mouth. When your movie is good, or at least is interesting, it's going to spread around people in barbershops or in stores or in families or on internet or wherever people congregate and speak about the things that they enjoy in entertainment. You want to be a part of that if you're selling a product of any form or fashion. When you're talking about word to mouth, the effectiveness of it is really shown in a couple different movies, but the most two notable ones I want to bring up is first and foremost a movie that I did not think was very good, but the power of word to mouth led to everyone seeing it, was Bird Box. Again, I don't think was very good in my personal opinion, but because there were memes going around about it everywhere.
He was
Are
terrified.
you a simpleton?
People were talking about it everywhere online. And this is during the pandemic, I believe. So people weren't even outside. All this word to mouth was going around the internet for the most part through memes and people talking about it through Discord lobbies or just text messages or phone calls. And everybody hopped on Netflix to see that movie. As a matter of fact, I'm curious. So me being curious, I wanted to bring up the amount of money that this film made. And obviously because it is a streaming movie first and foremost, and is only ever streamed and never was in a traditional movie theater and not in the box office, it couldn't follow traditional movie standards in regards to how much money it made. Netflix reports that over 45 million accounts watched this movie within the first 7 days on the platform, and it was a record for Netflix's original movies at that time. Analysts hypothetically calculated that viewership for this movie calculated roughly around $400 million if it was in the box office. Again, this is a movie that, for the most part, as far as I can remember, didn't have a lot of marketing or a lot of marketing budget. Again, $400 million in the box office, and when you look at the budget for this movie, the budget was only $19.8 million in US currency. So this movie only cost roughly close to $20 million to make and roughly turned around a $400 million profit for Netflix. And I'm pretty sure that the subscriptions on the platform boomed for people going to watch it, or maybe people just bootlegged it, because at that point in time, Netflix wasn't bootlegging the movies or sharing accounts at that point. Again, I think my point's kind of settling in here, where a movie that was put within word of mouth made a major success for Netflix. The other movie that I want to talk about in regards to that same thing is something very, very recent that was an amazing movie in Sinners, a movie that was so good that it got within the cultural zeitgeist and in people's word to mouth and spread around the community of online people and, you know, people just about and about in the world. People talked about this movie. This movie was everywhere. You couldn't go outside and talk about anything without this movie coming up in conversation. You could start out talking about, hey, Tom, how was your day today? Did you eat something good? Yeah, I had a burger, man. It was pretty solid. Anyway, nigga, did you watch Sinners yesterday? That's how most conversations went through. That's, at least for me, in my own magical world, that's how conversations went. But nonetheless, so when talking about Sinners was a movie that took them roughly $90 million to make, which again is relatively cheap, it feels, for a movie nowadays. It took around 90 million to make physically and around 50 to 60 million to market the film and then go about the marketing for commercials. So close to around 140 to 150 million dollars as a whole to make and market this film. This movie, after being in the word to mouth sphere and everybody talking about this movie and everybody wanting to see this movie multiple times, the movie made roughly around $340 million globally, I believe. So well over the amount it took to make this film. So this movie was a pretty big success. And again, when talking about word of mouth, these movies are key examples because there wasn't a lot of hype for these movies up until closer to their release. Again, if you are a big fan, you kept track of the whole announcement of Michael B. Jordan and Coogler coming together to make a vampire movie. I think I myself saw the article like 2 to 3 years ago when that was first announced, but most people didn't hear or care about this movie until the trailer started to come out. But when we're talking about horror as a whole, kind of going back to the main topic here, word to mouth has been something that has been very much more prevalent within horror movies as of late, within the last 5 years. Weapons being the most current example because that movie just came out and people are raving about it and going to see it. My prediction for horror though going forward is that horror is on track to have like a MCU superhero type of boom within the movie industry. And again, when I say that, I'm not saying that the movies are going to make billions of dollars like a Avengers Endgame or Infinity War. I don't think any of that is going to happen to that degree. It's possible because, you know, anything's possible. Maybe the right movie comes out that does that well, that grosses that much money. But in regards to the success, I'm talking about how horror movies, I feel like, are going to be in the cultural zeitgeist, and they're going to be so much more coming out that people are going to talk about on a daily basis and go see on a frequent basis. Horror feels like it's on that track because of how dominant it's been. And that's for a few reasons. First and foremost, horror movies, for the most part, are an extremely cheap movie to make in comparison to other things that require extreme CGI or a lot of different ways to rent out sets or spend all this different money on different avenues. You can have a horror movie that takes place in one location with like a group of 4 different people in this one location, and it can still be an amazing movie. Most of the money probably going to paying for the actors and paying for the cameras and different things like that. But for most part, horror is a relatively cheap movie genre to make, and it always has been. Horror has always been able to take the scraps that they were given and turn it into fucking gold. That is the biggest thing that I see in regards to this being a big thing going forward. And beyond the movies just being cheap, it has to come down to the studios. First and foremost, these studios operate in forms of money. And why do I say that? Because when you look at the reason why we have so many sequels and requels and reboots of movies that came out 10 to 20 to 30 years ago now, is because these movies are being directed at millennials. Millennials are the ones right now who are the spending majority of their money on entertainment as a whole. When you look at gaming, for instance, the average gamer is like 30 to 35 years old, so they make up most of the market. So you're going to market products towards this demographic. And when I'm looking at something like horror is very interesting because you can do the best of both worlds. I feel like in a lot of different aspects with some materials, when you market something towards one age group, you kind of alienate another, because Gen Z or Gen Alpha isn't going to have the same connection to something that came out that long ago. I think Beetlejuice probably being like a prime example. IP that's well known, but someone younger than me or around my age may not love Beetlejuice the same way that somebody that was a teenager or a kid when it came out loves it in that same fashion. These movies going forward, I think, have a very big chance to be amazing, because in horror in itself has a chance to blow up, in my opinion, additionally due to these factors, because you can have a movie that you don't need to market to one particular demographic or one particular age group. Even if you want to, you can have something like a Stranger Things that takes place within a time period that people can reminisce on, but still have original content that isn't going to alienate someone else, because you're not doing a reboot of a movie that came out 15 years ago that won't really interest a lot of younger people for the most part. You can have a lot of new innovative stories. So if I'm a studio and I'm looking at things from a money perspective, how can we put out something that is going to be relatively cheap for us, that's also going to give us a good return on investment? They can put out a movie like Bird Box that costs $20 million to make and make a shit ton of money back, because you don't need to put a shit ton of CGI or things into these films to make it amazing. There's a lot of different things you can do. And for the most part, to be fair, you can do these things in other genres of films, but I just don't see it. And I also don't see these other genres of film being genres that have been holding up lately. Superhero movies, for the most part, is growing thin for a lot of people, and a lot of people get superhero fatigue in regards to Marvel movies. And I think DC is really bringing things back around because it's kind of fresh with James Gunn and the way he's taking things. But even then, I think people are still kind of skeptical on a lot of that stuff. When you're looking at comedy, it's been relative, I'm not gonna say dead, but there hasn't been a lot of amazing or great comedy films that come out over the last 5 to 6 years. We get one solid one every now and then, but I can't recall like a group of amazing comedy films that came out over the last 5 years that have been amazing. You get things like the Coming to America 2 movie that people have been excited about and been waiting on for a while, and then it ended up being kind of blah, and nobody really talked about it for the most part because it wasn't that good of a movie in my personal opinion. But again, from the perspective of these studios, cheap movies, high return on investment, we can pump these things out. And we know they like to pump things out because we have 10 to 11 Fast and the Furious movies, like Jesus Christ. So if you give them this kind of model and they catch on to this model, we're going to get a lot of studios, I feel like, investing within these films. Now, when you're going into how that can benefit the customer, us, the viewers that want to watch these films, I think in putting a lot of different money into these films, yes, there is a chance that they'll just put money into films that are older and try to just milk that nostalgia, like we saw with I Know What You Did last summer that recently came out. That was, again, kind of blah. Even the new 3 Halloween films that came out, I think the first one was okay, but then it kind of trailed off in the other 2. Yes, they can do that, but I think a lot of the movies that have been popular have been showcasing a model of investing in up and coming stories, or invest in directors or writers that have history of doing some good stuff and turn out a good film, and just giving them money. Again, the Philippo brothers, who are the ones who did Talk to Me and did Bring Her Back, they've been putting out amazing work. And these are 2 people who were just YouTubers at one point in time making comedy sketches, but their first cinematic debut in horror was something that was a classic in Talk to Me, and they followed it up with Bring Her Back, which was another amazing film that gritty and really explored a lot of different things like grief, kind of similar to Talk to Me, but it was an amazing movie. So these 2 guys who showcased they could do something good, let's give them more money. Let's let them make more stories. We kind of see it happening with Zach Krieger, the guy that just did the recent Weapons film and did Barbarian before that, which again, I think Barbarian was kind of but again, his movies have been relatively successful to the point to where they're paying him to do a Resident Evil movie that's going to come out at some point soon. So again, we're starting to see some of these cogs kind of move and turn in regards to these up and coming artists and writers and directors getting a chance to make their movies within horror, and a lot of new innovative ideas. Again, I think the peak example of all this, if I have to go with something that is extremely recent that also gives me a chance to plug this movie and promote this movie, because I think it's going to be a great movie because the concept seems cool as hell, is a movie called The Good Boy, or Good Boy, I believe. A film that really much so follows a tale of a haunting of a man, but looks at it from the lens and perspective of the man's dog. So again, a lot of horror movies that we see, or in a lot of scary stories that we see, babies and dogs, being pure of heart, usually are more sensitive to seeing spirits and ghosts and demons, and they react to those things within a lot of horror movies. So seeing a movie that is a haunting from the dog's perspective is something that's really cool and badass in my opinion. And that movie went from being a limited release to being a full theatrical release after seeing all the hype for the movie and people being excited about this film. So again, these are just key examples of where I think horror is going and where I think it will be. Now, again, will we have a horror film in the next 5 years that's going to gross $1 billion like Avengers Endgame? No, I don't think so. Again, it is possible, but when I'm talking about horror being the future, it's going to be as prevalent as it was in the 80s, where you had superstar characters in a Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger or a Michael Myers who everybody knew and loved. They're damn near as unanimous as somebody like fucking LeBron James, to where your entire life, no matter what realm you're in, or even if you don't watch horror movies, you know what these people look like and you have a general idea of what they do and how they operate. People understand that Freddy Krueger is the guy that kills you in your dreams. People understand that Jason is the big scary zombie in the hockey mask that kills you with a machete. People know Michael Myers has the big butcher knife. People know these things about these characters because they were so prevalent in the 80s and everywhere within pop culture. Now, do we have any icons that are at the same level as a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael yet? Not quite, but I think we're getting there. I think somebody like Art the Clown is somebody who's infiltrated mainstream media for the most part, and is going to be another character who is going to be around for a while and get a lot more popularity, especially if we get somebody like a Rhea Ripley, who's a WWE superstar, who's a fan of the films, that has advocated a lot for wanting to be at least killed in one of the films. We get somebody like that in there who is known worldwide with something as big as a WWE. I could see that thing hiking the character of Art the Clown and the Terrifier movies up to a whole nother degree. Again, horror is in an amazingly good place right now, and I think it's going to be in an even bigger place going forward. So again, if you guys agree with me, let me know in the comment section below. If you guys disagree and feel like I'm full of shit, also let me know in the comment section below. I'm always open to having a conversation and a dialogue about these things, especially with a genre that I love with all my heart, in which being horror. So again, if you guys want to have that conversation and more in depth, you guys can click the link in the description and join my Discord channel. Also find me on my different social media platforms that are also linked in the description below, and chat it up with me there in different comment sections of videos or things that I post as well. And if you made it this far in the video at this point, I know you like the video, so please go ahead and like the video as well. And again, y'all let me know where you think the future of horror is going. But yeah, y'all, that's all I have to say. Again, I'm excited to see where horror as a genre can go and how far it can peak again. And I would love to be in an era similar to the 80s where it was just everywhere and very prevalent. I want to grow up and then be an adult in an era like that, because again, I wasn't even around for the 80s when this was a major thing where slashers were everywhere. I would love to see that and where we're going in the horror in the next couple of years. So again, if you guys agree, let me know in the comment section below. If you disagree, let me know that as well too. But again, y'all, this has been Captain Diesel of Captain Diesel's Dojo. Guys, be great people. Have a nice day. And remember, forever and always,
You're now watching the Captain.
I'll see you guys next time. Peace.